Well, good evening, everyone. My name is David Murray. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognising the continuing connections to lands, waters and communities. We pay our respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and to elders past and present. Again, welcome to you all. Thank you for joining us this evening for this second critical incident webinar. Our presenters tonight will be Dave Wood, Paul Overall, Mal Bartolo and Campbell Smith. So from me, thank you very much to our presenters for putting in the effort to share this information with you all. I have a special appearance from Brad Tubb, who will have some input throughout the evening. Special thanks from me to Paul Reardon, our IT manager, our media manager, sorry, for putting the webinar together and making this all possible. There is a chat function available on the webinar, and feel free to ask questions throughout the evening. Myself and Nigel Fall will answer these questions that are submitted via the chat function. Please remember to keep questions relevant to the topic being discussed this evening. This isn't a forum for debate, but a information session on a topic that hopefully we never need to use, but if we are exposed to relevant information, if it does happen to us, we can deal with things a little bit better. So I'll hand over to Dave Wood to commence tonight. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, David. Just what I would do just before we actually start the presentation, I'd like to introduce Bradley Tubb, our Queensland State Chairman, and Brad will say a couple of words for us, or a few words, and then on his ending of that, we will start the presentation as we get for the rest of the evening, and I'll introduce people as we go. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Dave.
Brad.
Well, good evening and welcome everybody to this webinar on critical incidents. As Dave Murray mentioned, we're fortunate we don't get confronted with them too often, but when things go pear-shaped and we do unfortunately have a critical incident to deal with, this webinar will go through what is a critical incident and how we need to respond to it. So I think you'll find it a very informative session. I'd just like to thank the team who's put together the material for this session. This is the second one that's been undertaken. So the team's put a fair bit of effort into pulling the material together and putting it in a way which is short, sharp and relevant. So thanks to the team, and I hope we have an enjoyable session tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Bradley. Appreciate that. Just until we get our driver into position. All right. This evening's session is on critical incident management, and what we'll do, we'll take you through various steps to give you some food for thought, and also a procedure to follow. As if something like if you attend a critical incident, then we know what to. The workshop, the outline of this workshop has been designed to enhance and expand your discipline-specific knowledge and skill set with regards to critical incident management, process and response. How do we identify this? And we will learning objectives, and what we'll do is critical incident terminology and definitions. Critical incident terminology and definitions is if we can, when you read other forms and you standardise what we sort of call a critical incident, and the people who work there as well. Team leadership and management, and everybody, as everybody knows, that you sort of normally will always need a leader, and I'll explain who that is and the way we go about it as we get through the next hour or so. Communications techniques, that covers how we deal with the various other people like the civil police, ambulance, fire brigade, work safe, and people like that. So, within our own field of motorsport. Effective stress management principles. We will go through that, and with that, will give you some idea of what or food for thought on how to deal with the management after the event, and your workers that you might suspect that aren't handling it all that well. Everybody handles distress a little bit differently, so we need to sort of lay that out. Potential legal, and the next one is potential legal process, and that will cover dealing with the police, the chance of going to a coroner's court, and also Motorsport Australia, how they will support you if you're involved where you have to go to a coroner's court or get involved in after the event. I know. Critical incident response plan, and I will talk you through that, or we'll be talking through that, and we'll show you what that looks like during the session. Is to be followed. There's a format. I think it's a 16-page plan which can be downloaded from the Motorsport website. If you look up Forms Index, and we will show you what that actually looks like as we go through. The most important copies of the response plan can be found, as I said, can be found on the Australian Motorsport Australia website under Forms Index, but also under the officials, you can get the forms. If you scroll down through the bottom of it, and it will come up with these forms also. Most important roles in this plan are the motorsport, and these two people, or these are the important people. Motorsport Incident Coordinator and the Motorsport Incident Controller. And what we will do is talk about in length on what that, who they are and what their responsibility and where you go from there to it. Generally, and just to cover it off, generally the clerk of course should also be the Motorsport Incident Coordinator. However, if they have not assumed this role, then it should be an experienced official who is in the event command. Not always is the clerk of course available to do it. In a major event, he has probably got another lot of other stuff. So it would be to nominate somebody as the incident coordinator, and this should be done prior to the event. So if something happens, everybody knows exactly what they want to do with, or who they've got to talk to. And you'll see, ideally, the coordinator and controller should be named in subregs. And as I said, this should be decided before the start of the event in regulations and things like that. All right, what I'd like to do now is to hand over to Campbell, and he will take you from there. So I will look at Mel. Right, so thanks.
Evening, everybody. I'm Campbell Smith, and I will run you through some critical incident terminology and some definitions. So in motorsport, we generally have three types of incidents. We have a motorsport incident, what we define as a medical alert, and thirdly, and most importantly, is the critical injury. So what is a motorsport incident? A motorsport incident is an unplanned or unusual event of significance which occurs as a direct result of motorsport activity, or it affects the safety of any person engaged in that activity, or it exposes deficiencies in the safety procedures or the facilities themselves. Secondly, we have a medical alert. So what is a medical alert? It's an incident or a situation at the venue which has not been declared as a critical incident, but which requires the concentrated focus of the medical team on the response and which may escalate to a critical incident. So thirdly, and what we're here tonight to talk about, is a critical injury. So a critical injury is an incident or situation throughout the venue which is in danger of becoming medically life-threatening. So what exactly is a critical incident? Critical incidents involve the following criteria. A fatality to a crew member, a competitor, official, or a spectator as a result of a motorsport incident. Or it's a significant injury to a member of the public. Or thirdly, it's a serious critical injury to any person, including a member of the public, which may result in death. So, a critical incident. The seriousness of the injury will be identified by the Chief Medical Officer of the event. Once they've identified that critical incident, it will be declared a critical incident by the Clerk of Courts. After that declaration, all work at the incident site will cease, except for the response to injury, fire, or other immediate danger. So we do not move the vehicles or clear or clean the site. So a critical incident, and my background mainly is off-road, and as you can see here, critical incident can look like this. But the critical incident is declared by the Clerk of Courts on the advice of the Senior Medical Officer at the event. So, how do we respond to the critical incident? Critical incident response forms one part of an official's duties they may have to perform at an event. It's one that attracts a great deal of scrutiny. It can attract a great deal of accolade, and it can also attract a great deal of criticism. So the impact on people and the event itself can be quite significant. And as I'm sure we all know, the last couple of years, Targa Tasmania has had some significant issues, as well as the Finke Desert Race. So that leads into my next presenter, Mel Bartolo, who will take you through team leading and management principles.
Good evening, everyone. As Cam said, I'm Mel Bartolo, and my background is car rallying, 20 or 30 years of involvement as an official, and I'm fortunate enough to be now in this seat. Okay, team leading and management principles. Dave's already mentioned this, but there are two very important people in the role of critical incident management, and they are the Motorsport Incident Coordinator and the Motorsport Incident Controller. So firstly, we'll talk about the Critical Incident Controller. This is the person that, sorry, thank you, coordinator. This is the person that sits at the command centre, is part of the command centre team. As Dave said, it could be the clerk, of course, but in another case, it will be a senior official. It could be the deputy, or in a lot of cases, it's a nominated person that's acting in the role specifically as the critical incident coordinator. Again, like Dave said, it will be someone with experience. It will be someone who's au fait with the processes, and it will be someone who can handle the pressure that's associated to the role within the command centre. The person is appointed to the role usually by the organising team, and it's done well before the event. A lot of reasons for that, but to understand the event and what's going on and to have all the relevant details that you need to have that person appointed before the event. The role is to coordinate the overall and formal response to an incident. As Cam said, the incident will be declared by the clerk, of course, and identified by the Chief Medical Officer. So this person in the command centre is going to do the, shall we call it, the legwork of getting things done. The coordinator will liaise with the clerk, of course, or his deputy, and certainly the motorsport incident controller who is actually going to be out on site. So we'll talk about that one later. Identify the incident control centre, normally race control, event headquarters, the command centre. Usually will be based in that location anyway, so identify the control centre. The coordinator notifies the civil authorities. So we've had the information come through from out on the course, whether it's a racetrack or rally or an off-road event, hill climb or whatever. We've had the notification come through. We've been advised that there's an injury. At this point in time, we might not know how serious, but it's bad enough to know that we've got to trigger some alerts. So we contact the police, the ambulance, possibly the fireys and whoever else we need. We commence documenting the response and the coordination activities. And again, we go back to the critical incident response chart. We follow those steps and we follow them very closely. We collate all the documents relevant to the incident, competitor, co-driver licenses, entry forms. If it's an official, we get the official, we get the officials' reports and so forth. And we start collecting this information. Now, as a footnote to that, whoever's in the role of the critical incident coordinator should start liaising well before the event with the event secretary, with the officials coordinator, and whoever's building the database of information, such that the incident coordinator has at the ready the information that he's possibly going to need, the phone numbers that he might need to call, the licenses, the documentation relevant to who might be injured. Continuing on, the coordinators, as I've already stated, I think, needs to contact the following bodies in a certain sequence: the emergency services, police, fire, ambulance, the Motorsport Australia emergency contact. Again, this is all information that you should have at the ready before the event starts. And relevant state work cover authority. The coordinator works with the stewards in data collection as per the critical incident plan. Liaises with liaises and informs the event promoter, the circuit owner, the property owner if it's an off-road event, and so on, the relevant stakeholders of the land that they are competing. Then there are security requirements. Does the vehicle need to be impounded? If it's a critical incident and the police are involved, it will more than likely be the police who will impound the vehicle anyway. Liaise with the peer support, your officials coordinator, the chaplain, the chief marshal. Inform those people of what's going on, particularly the chaplain, because when there is an incident and it's critical, the chaplain is a fantastic person to go to. The support they give is just, yeah, you can't measure it. And collate and complete all the documentation required and pass on to Motorsport Australia and the police if required.
Before we go on, there was a question that was asked online from Thomas Guzzlewinkle, for those who aren't following the questions online. His question was, in any incident, if the police tell us something and the clerk of course tells us something else, who is to be followed, especially in a motorsport controlled environment? David Morrie's answered, if the police are in attendance and the incident is handed over to them, then all directions from the police must be followed. So whilst it's still under motorsport control, once we hand that over to the police, it is then under the police control.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. Correct. Thank you. Any more, Nigel?
That's all so far.
Terrific. It's a relevant question, and I think we actually we sort of speak about that or speak to that shortly. Okay, the critical incident controller. This is the second person. This is the person that's not in the command centre, but during the event is probably located near the command centre, base control or whatever we want to call it, but is then, if there is a critical incident, will be directed to go out to the incident site and, by the title, take control of the site. So again, like the coordinator, is appointed to the event by the clerk of course or the organising team to take charge of an incident scene. We'll elaborate on that shortly. Direct the response at the incident scene. Liaise with the motorsport incident coordinator and the stewards. Control all movement of marshals at the scene. I think, as Dave said, stop the cleanup work, accept response to fire and injury. The incident scene is to be isolated and evidence of the incident protected from contamination, except for the safety and protection of the casualties. We'll elaborate on that shortly when we come to an example of an incident. So continuing on, motorsport incident controller will request the police to attend the incident scene via the clerk of course and via the incident coordinator. So the clerk of course will direct the incident controller to go out to the scene. He or she will collect more information and then report back to the clerk of course that we need the police. Our medical team will probably have already reached out to the ambulance, although again, the incident coordinator will probably also contact the ambulance. Confirms the identity of the casualties and any deaths direct with the doctor. Investigate the accident as a Motorsport Australia representative, if so directed. Now, there's no question about it. The fact that the incident controller has been sent to the scene, the person will investigate the accident. if so directed, the police will come into it as well. So there's still a bit of work to do. Assist the civil authorities at the incident site, collecting measurements, photos, witness details, and etc. for any subsequent investigation that may take place. At the conclusion, rehabilitate the scene to enable competition to resume. That all depends on the circumstance in the incident that we're going to have a look at shortly. The investigation was going on well into the night, so the scene was not rehabilitated, and that particular stage of an event did not resume. So I'll ask Dave to now move to the table to talk about the critical incident kit, and I'll hand over to you, Dave.
Thanks, Mel. But just firstly, we've got the equipment laid out on the table. What I'll do, I'll just go through briefly with you. We talk about the critical incident plan and response notes. As I said earlier, this can be downloaded from the Motorsport website. Controller, as I'm talking as a controller now, is to have this prior to the event. Now, when you get it, it's a 16-page, the plan is 16 pages, and it covers things like the date of the incident, who the policeman is, and stuff like this. Just from experience, and what I have done when if I've been unfortunate enough to fill that role as a controller, prior to the event or at the day of the event, and if you're close to the local police station, I have gone to the local police station and told and introduced myself and just said, just so they're aware that if they've got to send an officer out, then I'll be on site to talk to them. It lays down what you've got to do, and as I said, and all if you follow it down through each column and each paragraph, you can then fill out and sign the book. Right, now that's on that. Now, what we'd like to do is introduce you to the equipment or some of the stuff in what we call a critical incident kit. What we'll do is, I'll just go through briefly. Need a camera. I know most people these days carry a mobile telephone. Good, but you need that for home as well. So what you need to do is have a camera available. Now, from experience, when you take your camera, make sure it's got fresh batteries in it, and make sure the day and date or the date of it is also correct. And to put rubbish on me, the one that I did, I borrowed somebody's camera, which was great, except that it was a day out. So the accident happened on the day before it actually did. But we rectified that when we come to do the rest of it. All right, you'll need a pad and pencil to write notes, do some drawings and stuff like this, record names of people who you're talking to. And you can do this, and then you can fill out your form from that later on. If you look up here, you'll see a measuring tape. You want a tape that's at least 20 meters or something like this. This one is a 30-meter one. You can get it at Bunnings for a limit, very silly. A measuring wheel. Not necessary, you don't have to have it, but it just happened that I had one in my kit. So that is also to help you. Other things that you will need is some marking, some things that you can mark the ground or mark impact areas and stuff like this. Cans of paint, you'll find that the police will also use that. So occasionally just be careful when you're using it that you don't mark over a mark that the police or somebody else has put in there. Crayon, not much good in the dirt, but good on a circuit. You can sort of circle an impact or something that you found. You can circle it there and move that down. Some safety tape. Go around the area and clear it off so you can have a free area in there to cover that. Now, when you get to the site as a controller, do not park as close to the accident as you can get, because as close as you can get is you're probably covering over marks and in bits and pieces that will help in the investigation later on. So just be aware of that. And you'll see we've got some photos where we'll show you the marks that you would typically find on a site. Some disposable overalls. We're all dressed in sort of similar, like trousers, shirts, stuff like that. It could be, unfortunately, it could be a bit gory or something like this, or you get a bit of fuel and stuff like that running around. So you need to have something to cover up the clothes that you're going to have, that you've got on. Next thing is gloves. Some gloves at various times. We've got riggers gloves and we've got some other gloves here. Once again, protect yourself, protect your hands. You might, if you get there early enough, you might find that the car has been, there's been a fire or something like that. It's hot exhaust and stuff like that, that you need to clear away so you can get something out of the thing. Got some goggles. Once again, some goggles, protect your face, protect your eyes and stuff like this. The next one is your safety jacket. You'll see that, as you've seen in the previous slides, it's got a controller. If you've got that, that might be for your helper. You put it on so you can identify who you've got on site. The next thing is over here is it's a green, it's a cover or a piece of canvas, probably 2 or 3 meters in square, something that you can protect the site, or if you have a fatality, you may need to cover it up from go public, and also cover it up from the television and people like that who happen to fly over and take photos of the site of the area. Also, you will need, it's a good thing to have a light, a torch, and as I said, just a normal headlamp would be fine. I also have set a couple of triangles. I normally have that you can place prior to the accident, or that, just so if somebody's coming up onto that site, they know to look. They see a triangle, they slow down, stop, and then move on. All right. And up on the top there, we got some hand cleaner. Once again, not, in this day and age of COVID and stuff like that, it's nice to have some clean hands, and you want to wash stuff like this away from it. All right, I think that's probably covers that.
So one suggestion from Anthony Jenkins was that the suggestion of paint shouldn't be used, or should be only be used at the advice of the police in some circumstances.
Yes.
Circuits especially, they don't want paint on their race surfaces, so that's probably where a combination of your crayons and then your paint on the grass would be.
And Anthony would know, because Anthony's a police officer and he's attended these things. And I forgot in the intro, I forgot to thank Anthony and a couple of other, Bill Crouch and Andrew Lake, and they're all policemen in South Australia, Victoria and Queensland. And some of their information is gratefully received and was put into this presentation. All right, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Dave. If we can stay on that slide for a moment. The critical incident controller is the person that holds the kit. It's like you can see on the table, a simple bag. And at the beginning of the day or the beginning of the event, the critical incident controller should check the bag, make sure it's all there, and just ensure that everything's there and it's in the car that the incident controller is going to travel in. One of the other comments that we had as a result of recent incident at Willowbank, and this is probably generic for all officials, to just take along a change of clothes. In an incident site, you could get dirty, dusty, whatever, and it might be just nice to get out of those dirty, dusty clothes and get into a nice fresh set of clothes to continue your day on. Okay, next slide.
Before we go on, you were saying who should have the incident kit. How much does a kit like this worth?
Okay, good question. Look, out of the kit that Dave's just shown, probably the most expensive part of that is the camera. But a lot of the stuff that you have seen, I'm involved in rallying, so my club will always have race tape. But most of the stuff that you've seen can be bought at Bunnings, and if you exceed $100, you've done well. You could probably do it within $100 or $120. I know I put one together as well for myself, and I don't think I spent much more than about $100 at Bunnings.
What you see on the table, as I said, excluding the camera, is with the lot bigger tape and the marker, I think less than $200. That's really what it's cost to put that kit together. So it's not all that much. And remember that you, as the controller, you don't have to. It's nice to have one if you've got one, but your club or the organising club should have one of those in their rally headquarters or race headquarters that you can be picked up at the beginning of the day.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, so we're going to have a look at an example of an incident, and this was a critical incident that occurred at an Imbil rally in 2013. I was the Chief Safety Officer and was sent out to the site, and our partner here, Dave Wood, was the critical incident controller, and we both attended the scene. Dave was a little bit later in the day, but he was there for the duration, whereas I was there for the initial control and support and data collection. So, the rally incident. As Dave said, when you first arrive at a scene, it can be difficult to identify the course that the car has taken. And in this example, we've shown the wheel marks of, I think, probably the left-hand side of the vehicle.
The left-hand side of the vehicle.
That's the left-hand side. It was difficult to identify. So when you drive up to the scene, it is difficult to identify where the car went. So try to stay away from the incident site and walk up to it. Cordon off the area, except for necessary people. And there's a twofold reason there. You don't want sightseers coming up to the incident scene and having a look, but you also, back to that first point, you want to protect the area. You want to protect the markings and what have you. We'll talk about this later, but we also need to control what happens on social media. More on that later. So using the critical incident kit, the items that we've just shown you. Start collecting data. So, okay, this is a lot of note taking, taking photos, walking carefully over the scene and looking at where did the car go, where did it impact and so forth, and start taking measurements, photos, making up your drawings and so forth, such that you've collected information to help your investigation, but when the police do arrive, you can at least assist them with what you know so far. In this incident, there are tyre marks to the right of the road, scrapings along the bank, and tree matter on the right-hand side of the road. So if you think about the course, the car should have been hugging the apex going away from the beginning of the photo, but for some reason it was well over to the right. As we get closer to the impact site, you can start to see more evidence of where the vehicle travelled. And it's pretty difficult to see because it's a hard, compact road, and it was hard to see where the car had gone. But you could then see the debris on the side of the road and where it had actually, it had rattled a couple of trees that hadn't hit them, but it rattled them. There's further impact points and the final impact point where the car hit the tree.
Mel, can I just add in there, from the circle, the last purple circle there to where the red, where that car, there was no other wheel mark. So actually the car was actually airborne at that stage. They just, but we had to look over it. But as I said, there was just nothing there, no marks, except for where the final impact was. Thanks.
That's all right. And yeah, as you can see, very little evidence along the side of the road. And in fact, it was difficult to identify where the collision had happened because in that photo, you cannot see where the car is, and where the tree has been barked was pretty low and was difficult to see if you were driving along the side of the road. So moving on, that's the incident site. You can see that the car was well and truly down the bank. You couldn't see it from the side of the road. And yeah, it was, unfortunately, it was a fatality. Now, to go back to Dave's point, this is in question. This photo shows the 13th of the 7th, 2013. The incident was actually on the 14th.
Yes, yeah.
So
make
sure your camera's date and time is correct. If anyone's taking them with the phone, it's probably most likely going to be correct. But using a camera, just make sure that information is correct on the camera.
And the other thing, there on that photograph, it shows you how difficult it is to protect that whole area because we actually found the windscreen of the car some 40 metres away from it. So it covers, it won't, not like a circuit where most times it's confined inside some barriers. And I know that accidents at circuits will go over 100, 200 metres, but it's always, you can find the pieces here. You nearly needed to chainsaw and something like that to clear the bush to get to find out other bits and pieces of the car. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, so back to our critical incident kit. We've got some paper and we've got some pens. And this is actually Dave's notes, his interpretation of what he found. So you just take some rough notes, some rough drawings, measurements using the tools that you have. And, GPS coordinates and so forth, so that you start building up that information that will go eventually into your report. The next step, and in this particular instance, I'd done my investigation And because I live in Imbil, I went home away from everyone so that I can collect the information and redraw my diagrams so that they were clearer and better understood. And you can see by my drawing, I've included photo numbers. So photo number 1067 was where it was the car was skidding towards the edge of the road. Some rough measurements from one point to another. And so you put it together. Okay, not everyone's going to live near where the event is, but get yourself away from distractions, work with someone and write your report, because the more detailed it is, the better you are. Yeah, note the photos and so forth. Okay, now we move on to the next step, and I'm just going to, sorry.
Before we do, one of the questions that was asked online was, do you try and, from David Stillwell, sorry, do you try and keep your photos in estimated chronological order of the path of the vehicle? So David Morrie's actually answered it, but we can probably elaborate a little bit more if you like. Generally, yes. Normally take images from the beginning to the end of the incident, but then also from the end of the incident back to the beginning. So you've got two different angles.
Look, Dave's pretty much on the money there, but your photos are not always going to be in sequence. And I say that because you'll be looking over the scene and you'll be walking from the start to where the impact occurred. And because you might be focusing forward, you might miss something on the periphery. So when you're coming back, you might actually see something that you should have included in that first series of photos. So Dave's right. Try to do it as best you can in a sequence, but there will be photos that will be out of order. And look, and again, you go back to your notepad. I took a photo, it was photo number 1, 2, 3, and on your drawing, this is where the photo is. So you just keep that record on your paperwork. All right.
Mal, just before we continue on, thank you for answering that. We've also had a question from Kevin Balment. What bit of a statement? If you're using, if people are using their phones that take better photos than most cameras that are bought, which I agree. If you download Context Cam on your phones, which is free, date and time stamps with GPS coordinates, and all are on the camera, and it is permissible in a court of law as evidence. Thoroughly agree with you, David. I was unfortunately involved in a critical incident a number of years ago, and the local photographer downloaded their photos onto my computer, and the police confiscated my work computer. So if you want to do without your phone, keep using your phone, but that's why we recommend having a digital camera or a purpose phone for the critical incident kit in case the police do actually confiscate it from you.
Point.
Yeah, that's good.
Before we go to the next part, in fact, I'll allow Cam to start moving over to the next screen. One of the things I omitted to speak about then when we were talking about the critical incident controller and the activity going on at the incident site is the use of an application called CrashTag. Now, we may be doing all of this activity with our paper and our forms and our paint and our barrier tape, but should also be logged on to CrashTag before you go to the scene, and then start utilising CrashTag to collate your data and do very much what you would have done on your paper, but do it online, although you might be out of phone range. CrashTag will collect the information for you offline, and then it will update to CrashTag once you get into phone range. So it's a conversation to have about the use of crash tag and what we can do with it. Okay, so now we're going to move over to the critical, no, we're not. No, we haven't got it. All right, we're just having a minor technical issue here, moving over to the actual forms. We've got it now. Fantastic. All right, so we're going to talk about the critical incident response plan. And I'm not going to go page by page, it's pretty big.
16 pages.
16 pages long. It's a good document to prepare and print out, read it. It is a PDF, it's a fillable PDF. So as Dave said, you can collect a lot of this information and preempt a critical incident and have these forms filled out in part before you go to the scene, before you even go to the event, in fact. So yeah, that's the critical incident response form. What's the next one? Okay, that's what we're going to talk about. So yeah, it's a form that you should download, pre-populate the fields that you can, and then print it out and have it available in your folder, as Dave has shown before, and be ready to move on.
Can I just add on to that? Just as a controller, depending on who is selected, in my particular case, I was the chief scrutiny of the event. So I also continued after we actually got the car recovered. Oh,
Keep going.
sorry, we actually got the car out, but I attended it. So don't think that it's going to finish at the end of the day. I was still involved some 8 months later. So as I said, it is a time consuming, but it's a job that can provide a lot of satisfaction if it's done right, and it's it's a good experience to be able to talk about it, during this event. Thanks very much.
So one question about crash tag. If it's on your phone, what if the police want to have the access to that? Because crash tag is all online.
Yes, it is.
Motorsport Australia and FIA crash tag will be able to give all that information through to the police. So
Yes.
you won't need to hand your phone over for that one in that instance. And now we move over to effective stress management.
Hi everybody, I'm Paul Overall, primarily involved with circuit racing and speed events. But the principles that we're going to talk about are the same no matter where we are. There are 4 things that we need to do at the scene of an incident during and after the emergency. Right. We need to look. We need to listen, we need to act and link. By look, we mean look around you. Obviously, your attention is going to be focused primarily on the occupants of the vehicle, whether it's a single person or a crew in a rally or an off-road event or something else. But also have a look at the people who are near the incident. If you're at a circuit event, it could be in the crowd. It could be marshals at a marshalling point. It could even be marshals in a vehicle that was nearby to where it happened. We actually had some marshals killed in the UK when I was younger, which was a long time ago, when a car actually crashed into their vehicle. So it's not necessarily just the competitor that may be involved. So have a look around. Also pay attention to who's upset. you could unfortunately have the incident happen in front of a member of the family or a member of the pit crew of the car, or just somebody that's upset by the whole significance of the incident. And then you need to work out who needs immediate assistance and who you can leave for a short time. Listen to what people are saying. Does the person want help? What does the person want immediately? Do they want you to help them? Do they want to be left alone? Do they want you to contact somebody? And that comes down into act. What do they want you to do for them? Do they want you to contact their loved ones? Tell mum I'm okay. Fernando Alonso had a big crash at the Melbourne Grand Prix a couple of years ago, and he clambered out of his car that was upside down against the fence. And everybody said, wow, you got it out of there in a hurry. He said, because I knew my mum was watching it on TV and I wanted her to know I was okay. Do they need a change of clothing? And that can be your officials as well as other people, because quite logically, clothing will get contaminated either with dirt or blood or odds and ends. Talking back on the gloves that we were talking about before in the incident kit, everybody going to an incident should at least have something like rigger's gloves with them, because once the car goes over, there'll be sharp bits and pieces everywhere and anywhere. So make sure that you've got that aspect covered. And then the person that you deferred providing immediate assistance to, go back and check on them later on. So there's a fair bit to go through your head. You know, you've attended to the vehicle, you've attended to the people that were directly involved, but then there could be somebody off to the side that you need to pay some attention to. I think we're there. So critical incident stress during and after the emergency. Post-traumatic stress is what some people call it. That's the after the situation, but a lot of people go into what's virtually a state of shock during an incident. And that can happen to anybody. It can happen to people who've been involved in the sport for dozens of years, if not decades. It was put to me by a chaplain at an incident I attended once that we can all put up with these things for a certain amount of time, and then just like a glass of water filling up, you reach that point where the water's actually higher than the edge of the glass, and that one last drop comes in and the whole thing overflows. And he said, that can be the smallest incident that can trigger something off, and somebody suddenly is in a situation of stress. So with the individual, if you're the individual, tell a supervisor if you're feeling stressed. It's not a sign of weakness. It's telling them that you may not be able to do everything you're asked to do, that you may need to get away from the scene, you may need a break just to calm down and regather your thoughts, or you need to be well away from it, because quite often officials are very close and have a bond with the competitors, and quite often it may be the competitor they are closely attached to that's involved in the incident. De-stage in small segments. Don't just walk away and think, well, that's all behind me. Do a whole lot of small activities to help you unwind from the whole incident. You know, have a drink, clean yourself up, sit in your car, listen to music if that's what you want to do, write some notes. Don't talk to the public. Don't talk to the press. Motorsport Australia will look after dealing with the press type questions, and the public will simply want to know all the gory details which you don't want to keep rehashing and reliving. As a team leader, make sure you rotate your workers. Make sure to take regular breaks at a rest area. Don't let them wander off or go home or anything of that nature. because you may need to get some details from them, because you may not know all of them and you may not know their contact details or where they live or how they're going to get home if they're upset. All of that needs to be managed by you as a team leader. Tell them to withdraw if they're sick or injured, and again, keep track of them and where they're going to. Send them to the medical centre. Send them to event headquarters or race control if the medical centre is being used for the injury. Triage your workers. Work out who you can use to do the various tasks. Once you've been given the okay to clean up, start allocating those tasks to people, because once people get busy, it takes their mind off what's happened and it helps them start to recover from the whole process. Consume healthy refreshments. I'm not talking about fruit and veggies here. I'm talking about don't take alcohol or drugs or anything of that nature. Okay, post-traumatic stress, that's after it's all gone away. Attend, or if you are the clerk of course or the incident coordinator or controller, attend and arrange a defusing and debriefing session. We had an incident at a drag event last weekend, and there were 2 debriefs immediately after that, one conducted by a chaplain and the other one within the fire team themselves, the rescue team. Make sure you do some physical exercise. Don't go home, lock yourself in the bedroom and start experiencing morbid thoughts and so forth. Get out, get your blood flowing, clear your mind. Eat and drink healthy products. I touched on that before, but keep doing that, not just for that initial 1 or 2 hours after the incident. Do it for an extended period of time. Talk about it and express your emotions openly. A lot of us, especially of the male persuasion, tend to put on the brave face and I'm tough and I don't need to talk about this, I can manage it, and they bottle it all up. And at some point of time, as I said before with the glass of water, it'll all bubble out at the end. So the better you express those emotions, you can control the rate at which it all happens. Keep a journal or a diary, not only for the notes on the incident, but also on how you are feeling about the whole process. Because if it comes back to give you some emotional problems, you've got a document that can say to whoever's going to provide the assistance to you, this is how I felt on day 1, this is how I felt on day 2, day 3, this is the case. So that can provide some great assistance to whoever's providing that emotional support to you. Again, reduce alcohol, caffeine, tobacco. Don't take non-prescription drugs. You might think that something like that will help you sleep or whatever, but it's only an artificial cover. It's not going to solve the problem for you. You need to accept that flashbacks and dreams are normal. And likewise, control your morbid thoughts. Oh, what if I'd done this? Would that have happened? If I'd moved that rock off the road, if I'd have put the flag out a bit earlier, if I'd have made sure that something was done up properly or whatever, it may not have had the impact that it did. You can only control what you can control, and things that have happened in the past you cannot control. You need to accept all of that. Talk to a motorsport chaplain. They are not God botherers. They will not try and convert you to a certain religion or faith. They're there to provide counselling and support, emotional and friendship. And they are available pretty much on a 24-hour call basis.
Charles Sandham has just posted.
Charlie is a chaplain,
He's a
and
chaplain.
I apologise for the pun there.
Yeah.
He said that he debriefed both fire crew and the Willowbank staff after the incident last weekend. And it's important for everyone to know that when the chaplains are available, they're quite happy to have a chat one-on-one, and they don't mind if they need to hang around after the event to do so if you need a bit of quiet time.
Yeah, and thanks for that, Charlie. Great to hear from you. So discuss it with the chaplain, discuss it with friends, your family, and if you are one of the officials that has a mentor, talk it over with them, because the chances are that your mentor maybe hasn't experienced a critical incident with a fatality, but they've probably been through some fairly significant incidents over the years. I'm going to move on to the legal process. We got another question.
Yeah.
David's doing it.
You go, Nigel.
No, you're doing it. You're doing it.
Okay, so we've had a question come through from Deborah Squires. During a critical incident, do we as officials have a responsibility to disperse spectators away from the visual of the incident, or is this the responsibility of security police if engaged?
Your role would be to assist the police if they've arrived, because let's face it, the police aren't going to turn up within 2 minutes of the incident happening. So initially, it will be the officials, the marshals, that will have to deal with all of that. And going back to an incident I was involved with, I had a major fire some years ago, and a lady was walking down pit lane towards that fire, and I thought, I know where she's going, and she's very determined. And so I stepped in front of her and I said, I'm terribly sorry, but you can't go there. And she looked me right in the eyes and she said, young man, I am his mother. And I'll tell you what, that was an awkward situation to manage. But I said, well, look, I appreciate your concern, but there's nothing you can do down there at this exact moment, because trust me, the fire was still blazing at that point of time. I said, you stay with me and I'll keep you informed as quickly as I can. And so she sat down where I was and I got her a drink and a can of water, I think it was, a bottle of water. And within 2 minutes, maybe even a minute of it all happening, I got a call on my radio saying that the driver was still with us and he survived the incident. So yeah, controlling the crowd, definitely a responsibility of an official. Once the police do arrive, generally there'll only be 2, maybe 3 of them. So they'll appreciate all the assistance they can get.
Yeah.
Generally, especially in a rally environment where you're a fair distance away from other individuals, Deb, only the police have the authority to actually move people on. But I've found that various individuals with certain approaches can be moved on quite effectively. So all you can do is the best you can until further help arrives.
That red and white tape that Dave showed that's in the incident controllers kit is magical stuff. People, for some reason, by and large, won't go past it. So if you've got some of that, that's quite handy.
And that red and white tape is good because we know that it stops race cars and rally cars at 100 miles an hour from driving through them. So a few spectators, it'll more than handle that.
Terrific. Okay, the legal process. Keep your notes and photos, like make copies of them available to whoever in authority needs them, Motorsport Australia, the police, or whatever, but keep a copy for yourself and keep them, if not forever, for a long, long time. I would think at least 7 years is still the statute of limitations in most states.
I've got all my photos and everything from 2013.
I've got stuff that goes back over 20 years. Yeah. So yeah, keep your notes and your photos, just put it in a file cover somewhere and stick it in the back of a drawer in the back of a photo album, just in case. Don't offer comments to the media or other parties. We've touched on that before. Don't post comments or images. Sorry. And don't post comments or images on social media platforms. The power of social media is beyond comprehension. Forgetting what happened with the Qantas flight QF144 today, there was a Qantas flight into Hong Kong some years ago, and out of Hong Kong, as the plane took off, part of the engine cover fell off the plane, and somebody took a photograph of it and stuck it on social media. And that all sounds pretty innocent. And in Melbourne, the share price of Qantas started to fall, and nobody knew why until somebody looked on social media and saw the story. So before Qantas had even been told that one of their planes had a problem, somebody posting something on social media had impacted the share price of that company. So the same thing can happen with an incident or an accident, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a motorsport accident. Somebody sticks a photo on social media of a car crash or whatever, and they don't, let's just say they stick it up there and somebody can identify the car, immediately the thought goes to, well, I know that person, or that's my son, or that's my daughter, or my kids are in that car or went in that car. And that's before anyone really knows what's happened, before the police can contact people. And that's not the way that these things should be managed. It's not the way they should be handled.
Can I just add a little bit? Cam has had that just recently at Rainbow. Cam, is that just on social media? So as Campbell, his role as a course checker was in an incident.
I suppose there's been two for me in the last year. The photo you saw earlier in the presentation with the rollover at Fink. We were in the race headquarters and those photos were on social media before the race control even knew there'd been an accident. So that's always difficult. And also, unfortunately, at Rainbow last year with the fatality, there was comments being made on social media before the incident had even been completed. So, you know, managing social media is a bane of our existence, but if we can control it as much as we can, that is one of our major roles, I guess. Sorry, Paul.
No, and especially don't offer comments and say, well, I was there, or, you know, I'm the bloke that did this, I'm the guy holding the fire extinguisher, I'm the bloke that helped him out or whatever. That simply draws attention to you, which is probably why people do it. But it also deflects all the information. Going back to the Rainbow incident that Cam just talked about, subsequent to that, the Vic Police examined or watched our earlier webinar on this process, which is pretty much what you've seen tonight, but we've embellished it a bit more, and came back and said, well, look, that's a good training tool, and everything that was done at that incident at Rainbow was in accordance with our training tool, and they had no problems with it, which leads me to this last point. If you're summoned to appear at a court, whether it be a coroner's court, and these things, unfortunately, it's not TV. The coroner doesn't have their court hearing 2 days after the incident. It's generally several years down the road. But if you are summoned to appear at a court, whether it be a coroner's court or whatever, contact Motorsport Australia. Don't go off and find a solicitor or a lawyer until you've spoken to Motorsport Australia. If you want to engage your own legal people, that's fine and dandy, but make sure that that firm contacts Motorsport Australia who have a much better understanding of the sport and where the sport sits in the world of judicial process and so forth. Because quite often your solicitor might be great at buying and selling houses or townhouses. He may not have a great working knowledge of how motorsport law and so forth apply. So deal with Motorsport Australia. They'll put you in touch with legal support who are knowledgeable of our involvement in the sport. Are there any more questions?
There was one comment from James Whelan in regards to social media and things at the scene. Just be wary of any radio communications that don't accidentally get broadcast to the spectators that are around you. If there's going to be critical or sensitive information, possibility of mobile phones, or just make sure you've got your headset on.
Yep. Yep, all logical stuff.
Yep. There is another question that David's about to answer.
Just a question from Jackie regarding the taking of photos. Should this be purely left to the incident controller, or if helpful, should a trackside official take photos too? Maybe if they were first on the scene, or if the incident controller takes longer to get there.
I tend to say that the incident controller should be the person that takes the photos, because otherwise it's very hard to coordinate the logging of all of these photos and where they all go. That's why we have the incident controller there. If you do take photos, obviously you've then got to make them available to the incident controller.
So Jackie, just remember that as a trackside official, a stage side official, your initial response is obviously to try and remove the danger, but also to protect the scene if you believe that it could be a critical incident. But until it's actually declared a critical incident from the clerk of the course with advice from the chief medical officer, we don't really know whether photos are required. So it's about protecting the scene. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thanks very much. We just summarise what we've all been speaking about, and we hope that everybody has gained some knowledge, or not all of it, but it's something that it gives you a guide of what to do and how to do it, and also to follow. And if you were to follow it, the things that we have said, then it makes your life easier as a motorsport official at a critical incident. Just to summarise what we've done, the incident control and coordinator are both and should be nominated prior to the event. And that's something that clubs and organisers, when they write their sub-regs and things like that, don't always do. It seems to be missed, but let's start 2023. Let's start doing it as the norm. And both, as I said, you'll read there, both listed in sub-regs and further regs. Don't be caught out by the incident. Pre-plan, and the more you do to pre-plan something like that, like the form that we, the incident plan, the response form, pre-fill it out. Go and talk to the local policeman if you're in a rally or an off-road. Probably at a race circuit, you'll have probably 20 or 30 policemen roaming the places like it, Bathurst and stuff like that. But you can still make contact with, I think they still have a police coordinator in headquarters and stuff like that these days that they form. So let them know that who is going to be, you're going to be the controller or the incident coordinator for that. Everybody make sure that what notes you write, or write notes. And as Paul said earlier, once you've written them and you've used them, but keep them, put them aside somewhere in safekeeping, because as Paul also suggested, that the coroner's court doesn't always happen tomorrow. It may happen several months or even 12 months, a couple of years down the track. So you just need that. You can have a read through them if you call for it, and you will just refresh your memory. Don't try to remember it all. Have a read of them and use your notes. Assist as an official, assist the motorsport or the incident controller. Remember that he'll probably have somebody with him, but he can't be in 25 places at once, and especially over a large area. You as an official, stage commander, stages, something like that, at rallies and things like that, you can also do your part in helping keep the area clear of spectators. Do not start to rehabilitate the area until you're cleared to do so, because once again, the investigation on that accident site, it might have happened later in the afternoon or during the day, and you may have to go back there or you and the controller and the police may have to go back there for 2 or 3 days after and collect more information. So do not do that until it's absolutely you're cleared to do so. Once again, and I think this will just to reiterate, do not make comments to the media and to other people. Most of the media the last thing we want to do, have it on, because they look at motorsport differently to what we do. Just as an example, I'll give you the accident we had in 2013. We had a helicopter hovering over the accident site for some hour and a half, 2 hours. The next morning, the channel that was involved rang the event headquarters and offered to sell us the footage of the accident site. I won't tell you what was said to them, but we didn't use it. Senior officials must, once again, we get on to senior officials must ensure a hot debrief is held and stand people down if required. And as we said, we had the thing from Charlie before, he did a debrief, and I know, I think Paul spoke to John Courtney, one of our people that were involved in it the next day, and I certainly spoke to him, just to sort of see how he was getting on. So just remember that. It's always nice to have a phone call from somebody saying, how are you? Can we do anything for you? If we can't, give us a call if you feel you want us to do something for you. So just remember that. And then resume competition again and enjoy. And I think that probably wraps up the seminar. And hopefully we might get some more questions if we got time.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. Yes, we do have a couple. Just one from Tony Thorne and Kevin Belmont. They've asked whether presentations are going to be made available. Let's say whether the PowerPoint's going to be made available. So I might as well just answer that for everyone. So following this over the next few days, Paul Reardon will be sending out a PDF version of the presentation along with a certificate of attendance, a participant workbook, and some of the Motorsport Australia emergency contact details for your reference. So keep an eye out on your inbox for all that information, and that's obviously then available for you to keep. Also within that email, I do understand that some of you may be signed in along with your spouse, partner, or family member. So once you get the email, it will also ask if there was 2 attendees, let us know, and we can send out the certificate of attendance to you as well. So hopefully that answers your question, Tony and Kevin.
David, can I just ask you, will that then, once you issue the certificate of attendance, does that go on your training record within your members portal?
So this is an information session. So
Yeah.
it's not aligned
It's
to
not a
a
training.
license level. It's not a
Yeah,
grading.
all right, now I understand. All right, thanks
so-
very much for that.
Yeah. So we've also got for the group from Luke McNichol for note taking while on a site. Speech to text is a good tool. So that's actually valid information, Luke, and thank you for sharing that with us.
As you know, this session has been very good information wise. It's probably also good to note that the training that we're doing here is to help you in case there is an incident. And it's not all scary. It's all part of helping you to get through the incident, to help you deal with the incident in the best way possible and have the best outcome.
Few more coming in, few more questions coming in. Can we share to other FIA international officials the PDF? Thomas, you certainly can. However, the information contained in our critical incident management may not be the same as what would be in another part of the country, another part of the world, I should say. So by all means, the information is available on our website, so it can be shared with international officials as long as it's relevant to them. We've also got Lord Murray Schoolman. What is the next step if we want to progress to a training module? So with the critical incident module that we've gone through, there will be one available online over the next 12-month period. Again, though, it isn't a module or training session that is aligned to a grading or license level. It really is for your information. So it's like an upskilling module rather than a grading module. Belinda Howard has come in. The coordinator is the control command center. The controller is at the scene.
Correct.
Correct. Yes. So you have the incident coordinator, and then the which is generally the clerk of the course or another experienced official, and then the incident controller is physically at the scene. We also, earlier we had Felix asking about further information for crash tag, whether there was further information. So Felix, if you go to aims.com.au, there is a crash tag tab on there, which has a lot of information on crash tag. And also, I believe it has a section on the website where you can pose questions. No more questions have come through, but Scott Chammings has said that the critical incident is a key part of the event command and stewards training, and that is correct. So to the individual that asked the question earlier about the next step for training, it doesn't go into in depth as it has for this information session, but the silver module, the event command module and stewards module all have references to critical incident because they're obviously the parties that are most involved in dealing with a critical incident. Apart from some thanks coming in from individuals, Marilyn Emmons, thank you to the presenters. Good to see a couple of off-road clubs represented. David Stillwell, a great refresher from the silver training module. Thanks for all involved putting this together. So yeah, lots of thanks coming through from Steve Collier, Gwenda Seal. So thank you very much, everybody. That does appear to be it, though. There's no individual questions being posted by anyone. So at this stage here, we might finish off the webinar. If you have any questions that you think of over the next few days, please don't hesitate to send me an email, dmorrie@motorsport.org.au. And if I can't answer it, I'll reach out to one of the presenters or somebody else within Motorsport Australia to answer that. I can't see. Nigel, can you see any questions that I might have missed coming through?
We're all good.
All good. All right. Again, thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time out of your evening to join us for this critical incident webinar. Thank you to the presenters for your information, and thanks for all the questions that have been posted by our participants. It's really pleasing to see that you're also engaged with this important information. Thank you again, Dave, Mal, Campbell, and Paul Overall for presenting this information to everyone tonight. And we'll see you all at a
David, if I could just say thank you to you and Paul. It's great. I think it was a vast improvement to what we did the first time, and we can only get better. And I'll talk to you later on about it.
Thank you, Dave. And yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Looking forward to seeing you at a circuit, rally or off-road event sometime in the near future. Thanks all.